Brittney Griner, who was imprisoned in Russia in a man's prison.
And recently, a momentous personal occasion has happened for her.
Respectfully, Brittney Griner was in a Russian prison. You would think that somebody who is now free, back in America on home soil, would not have too much to complain about.
Brittney Griner just had a complete meltdown after Stephen A. Smith obliterated her for making racially charged remarks about Caitlin Clark. The woman, once hailed as a Russian prison survivor, thought she could play the race card over crowd noise until Stephen A. hit her with a brutal dose of reality she clearly forgot. The takedown was so savage, Griner completely lost it. So what was more humiliating? Getting called out for her tone-deaf racial comments, or having Stephen A. drag her back to the memory of her high-stakes prison rescue? Brittney Griner just went through the most public humiliation of her entire WNBA career, and honestly, it was kind of beautiful to witness. After making some wildly disconnected remarks about race and the crowd response in WNBA games, Stephen A. Smith stepped in to deliver a reality check so sharp it sent Griner into a full-on spiral. The meltdown that followed deserves a highlight reel of its own. She literally said, yeah.
The WNBA's Brittney Griner is, in fact, a man. And where a lot of this actually surfaced from, and I mean, you guys could probably say, like, yo, isn't it obvious? Like, her voice, you know, there's a lot of things.
Every time we play her, there's this big commotion, like this loud rumbling from the stands. And get this, she wasn't talking about fights or riots. She meant fans, thousands of people sitting there watching on purpose. She added, it's super disruptive. WNBA games used to be quiet. You could bring your laptop, maybe get some work done. But now it's like big groups of people are yelling about the plays. It puts pressure on us. It's toxic. She even claimed, I saw a dad and his daughter yelling. I couldn't tell if it was about my game or just some light racism. Yeah, she said that. Light racism. But let's rewind and walk through what actually happened, because understanding the timeline makes Griner's reaction even more wild. In a recent interview, she vented about the increasing crowd energy that Caitlin Clark has brought into the league. Specifically, she pointed out a father and daughter cheering in the crowd, and bizarrely suggested their excitement was either criticism of her play.
Toxic. I saw a guy with his daughter in the crowd, both of them yelling, couldn't hear what they were saying exactly, but it was either my performance or some light racism. But here's where I'm going with this.
Or light racism. That one phrase, light racism, sparked the firestorm. Griner had essentially reduced fans enjoying basketball to racially motivated chaos. Think about that. A pro athlete watching people cheer and assuming racism, that kind of hyper-paranoia and constant victimhood? Stephen A. Smith wasn't having it. Respectfully, Brittney Griner sat in a Russian prison. You'd think that someone who was freed from a foreign cell back on US soil might have a bit more gratitude, especially over something as basic as fans showing up to watch her play. So when Stephen A. heard her comments, he lit her up. He reminded everyone that Griner was rescued in a dramatic prisoner swap, not years ago, but recently. And not just any swap. The US literally traded Victor Bout, an international arms dealer known as the Merchant of Death, for her. Yes, a man convicted of plotting to kill Americans was released to bring Brittney Griner back home. And now she's complaining about crowd noise. Stephen A. didn't let that irony slide. The comparison he drew was absolutely devastating. This is someone who faced real oppression, real punishment, real consequences. And now she's using her second chance, not to inspire, not to lead, but to complain about people being too loud at her.
Sick and tired of the WNBA. It used to be a peaceful, small little thing. Now there's crowds screaming, hollering. This is disruptive. It's not allowing us to play the game. This is her quote. I don't know if you saw this or not when she gave that. Okay.
Games. The level of entitlement and disconnect was so blatant, even some of Griner's own fans struggled to defend her. But here's where the whole thing spun out of control. Instead of pausing, reflecting, or acknowledging Stephen A.'s very valid point, Griner doubled down. She clapped back at Stephen A. directly, accused him of being ignorant, said he didn't understand her experience. She basically had a full-blown public breakdown simply because someone dared to push back on her worldview. It was unhinged. Let's pull some receipts, like ticket prices. After Caitlin Clark was sidelined for just 2 weeks. Ticket prices for Indiana Fever away games, specifically against the Chicago Sky and Washington Mystics, dropped. That's from Yahoo Sports via TickPick. Griner had complained that Caitlin Clark's arrival was disruptive, but the data proves Clark is literally the engine driving WNBA popularity, and that's what makes the entire episode so ironically poetic. Griner whined about noisy crowds messing with her performance, but her own comments caused far more chaos than any fan ever could. She became the distraction, the exact thing she claimed was hurting the game, and Stephen A., he wasn't.
The girl is spectacular. It's not like she's not a scrub. She's not only can play, she's a star caliber player who draws this attention.
Done. He dug deeper, past the prison swap to the real issue, Griner's apparent misunderstanding of how pro sports work. This isn't a yoga retreat, it's professional basketball. Fans don't pay to sit silently and meditate. They pay to yell, to cheer, to create a vibe. That energy, most athletes thrive on it, but Griner was treating excitement like it was a personal attack. Her outburst also exposed a bigger truth. Some WNBA players simply weren't ready for the spotlight. For decades, the league existed in a quiet bubble. Few critics, low stakes, zero accountability. Now Caitlin Clark has arrived, and with her comes national attention, real media pressure, and actual consequences. And clearly not every player knows how to handle that. What made Griner's comments even worse was the racial framing. She saw a family cheering and assumed without any proof that they might be racist. That mindset, it doesn't help the game. It doesn't move the conversation forward. It turns every moment into a search for offense. Stephen A. called that out too. He reminded viewers how damaging it is when public figures carelessly toss out racial accusations without evidence. It weakens the impact of real racism. It sows division, and it makes people tune out, even when the cause is legitimate. Griner's use of the phrase light racism to describe enthusiastic fans, that's exactly the kind of recklessness Stephen A. has always stood against. And the aftermath of his comment.
That's how fans act in every arena. In every arena. So, and then when you clearly she's not remembering.
It was everything you'd expect from someone who's never faced real pushback before. Griner flooded social media with defensive rants. She posted repeatedly, doubling down instead of self-reflecting, and in doing so, she confirmed every single criticism Stephen A. had made. Instead of introspection, she chose indignation. Instead of growth, she played the victim. What made her meltdown especially cringe was the timing. The WNBA is seeing record-breaking growth in viewership, media attention, and money, and who's the main driver of that growth? Caitlin Clark. So rather than welcoming the new wave, Griner's response was to attack it. Instead of celebrating the opportunity to reach bigger audiences and earn more than ever before, she chose to complain about the exact reason that money is rolling in. And that's why Stephen A.'s mention of the prison swap hit so hard. It was a reminder of where she was and how far she's come. Someone who's truly grateful for freedom would never waste it whining about fans being too loud, compete, and every fan who chooses to spend their hard-earned cash to watch her. Play Griner's total lack of gratitude for being rescued and allowed to resume her pro career screams entitlement. Like shocking levels of it. The US government literally brokered a deal with a terrorist organization to bring her home, and her biggest issue now is that the crowds are too loud. That kind of take isn't just out of touch, it's borderline delusional. Her breakdown also revealed just how incapable she is of handling fair criticism. Stephen A. wasn't dragging her personally or slinging baseless insults. He was laying out straight facts about her situation and responding to her complaints with clear logical points. But instead of addressing those head on, Griner reacted with raw emotion and
everyone deserves the right to play. Everyone deserves the right to come here, sit in these seats and feel safe.
Knee-jerk defensiveness. What really shattered her argument was when Stephen A. compared her to other athletes. He highlighted how players in leagues like the NBA, NFL, MLB, and NHL constantly deal with rowdy road crowds and fired up fans. It's literally part of the job. No one else in professional sports is whining about noise like Griner, and that contrast made her stance even more bizarre. To make matters worse, Stephen A. wasn't the only one calling her out. Media voices, ex-players, and even some current WNBA athletes started pushing back on her take. The whole meltdown proved she wasn't built for criticism on a broad scale, especially when it targets the victim narrative she seems so determined to cling to. Griner's attempt to inject race into the conversation was a major misstep too. It pulled attention away from real conversations about the WNBA's momentum and success. Instead of embracing the growth and rising fan energy, she was trying to frame it as a problem. Stephen A's clapback was perfect, not because it was harsh, but because he stayed firm and refused to sugarcoat the truth. He didn't just stick to his points, he expanded on them, breaking down exactly why her comments were so out of sync with reality. That unflinching approach left Griner with nowhere to hide. Her argument fell apart under the weight of actual context, and the silence from most of the WNBA community spoke volumes. When players and coaches aren't stepping up to defend one of their own, it's usually because they see the issue clearly, even if no one's saying it out loud. The lack of support for her racial framing showed just how off base she really was. Her outburst also highlighted the difference between real critique and fake outrage. Stephen A. was focused on legitimate concerns. Her mindset, her take on fans, her unwillingness to engage with the realities of modern sports culture. Meanwhile, she was busy inventing problems where there weren't any. The difference between thoughtful analysis and emotional spin was obvious to anyone paying attention. The timing of her meltdown made everything worse. The WNBA is finally getting traction, mainstream buzz, bigger numbers, real momentum, and here's Griner throwing shade at the very fan engagement that's fueling the league's rise. Her complaints, especially the racial innuendo, weren't just miscalculated. They risked turning off the casual fans that the WNBA desperately needs to keep climbing. Stephen A's commentary also opened up a bigger conversation about how athletes handle accountability in the social media era. Griner's remarks weren't made behind closed doors. They were public, and public words deserve public pushback. Her inability to take that heat shows just how unready she was for the consequences. Stephen A's focus on the prison rescue wasn't just a cheap shot. It was a smart move that emphasized how much America had done for her. The same country that secured her release from a Russian cell is now being criticized because its basketball fans are loud. That contrast was glaring, undeniable. The whole situation also demonstrated how social media can pour gasoline on controversy. Instead of letting Stephen A's comments fade, Griner kept posting defensive rants that dragged things out and made her look more fragile with every reply. But the most damaging part? Her reaction confirmed every stereotype people already had about thin-skinned athletes who crumble under pressure. Rather than rising above it all with class or humility, she lashed out, played victim, and proved every criticism true. Stephen A's consistency is what made his response hit even harder. He stuck to facts, didn't get personal, and let Griner's own words betray her. His analysis gave viewers context that completely unraveled her point of view. This wasn't just about one player, it exposed a much deeper issue: the tension between the WNBA's new spotlight and certain players' comfort with the old, low-pressure world. Griner's attitude echoed the mindset that kept the league small and ignored for decades. The meltdown proved some athletes weren't ready for the spotlight that Caitlin Clark's stardom brought. Clark handled pressure like a pro. Griner? She spiraled. Defensive, emotional, and completely self-sabotaging. What's worse is that she turned a minor critique into a headline-grabbing disaster. Had she simply ignored Stephen A or replied calmly, it would have faded. Instead, she threw gasoline on it and gave the media a week-long frenzy. That whole prisoner swap narrative, that's going to stick with her now for life. Not because Stephen A brought it up, but because she refused to show an ounce of gratitude or perspective when it mattered most. That contrast, that stark reminder, was seared into the public's memory. And honestly, the most satisfying part of all this was finally watching someone challenge Griner's out-of-touch takes without flinching. Stephen A didn't let her hide behind identity politics or defensive tantrums. He held the line, and it worked. Her meltdown did more than just prove his points. It became the proof of them. Instead of demonstrating growth or perspective, she came off as the poster child for privilege disguised as oppression. The lasting image isn't of an elite athlete, it's of someone who created problems instead of embracing opportunity. Griner just learned the hard way why playing the victim. Card around Stephen A. Smith never ends well. Her racially charged comments exploded in her face, and the public breakdown that followed. Absolute entertainment. The prison rescue angle may have been brutal, but it was spot on. Smash that like button if you think Stephen A. nailed it. And don't forget to subscribe for more moments where accountability actually wins.